Hi there, I'm Darren Hudson. I'm an intensive care physician and I work in Edmonton in the General Systems Intensive Care Unit and the Neuroscience Intensive Care Unit at the University of Alberta. As well, I also work as a transport physician with STARS Air Ambulance, and because I apparently don't have enough work to do, I also am the Associate Medical Director for eCritical. But my message today is not just for people at eCritical. This is a message for everybody within the IT portfolio at Alberta Health Services and Alberta Health. Last week, the sickest patient in Alberta at 4 o'clock in the morning needed to be transported from Red Deer to Calgary for ECMO. The story begins when I get a phone call at 4 o'clock in the morning during our last snowstorm about a patient in Red Deer who was critically ill. He was severely hypoxic, and his chances of surviving in Calgary were very low because he'd been rapidly deteriorating despite all of their efforts. It was clear that he needed extra help and he needed to be sent to Calgary. However, given the information that I had at the time, the patient was so critically ill that transport would likely have killed him. And so, unfortunately, despite everything that we could do, we were stuck and we were luckily left with a patient who was not transportable and was going to die. But nowadays, I have one little device which allows me to change the entire game. Thanks to this one little device, instead of just going back to sleep, I could actually get up, go to my office, sit in front of my computer, and I could connect not only to eCritical, but to Netcare and the PACS system and find out, in addition to the patient's past history with Netcare and review all of his x-rays on PACS, but I could see minute-by-minute information about what was going on with the patient's vital signs and ventilation. And from this information, I could see that the patient was actually much sicker than what we had been initially told. With this information, I could talk to the sending physician in a lot more detail about what they could do to try to optimize the patient. And our first maneuver was to try and prone the patient. This would allow us additional time to see if he was even going to respond to therapy and hopefully buy us a window of opportunity to facilitate a transport. But at the time, he was not transportable. So after we had him proned, and before I even had to wait for the phone call from the sending physician, I could go back online and review all of the data again and see where the patient was at. And because of this, I could see that the patient was not responding to therapy, and it was probably necessary that we would have to bite the bullet and either take the patient to Calgary and accept a risk of death or allow him to die in Red Deer. Because the patient was on a system that was distributed across Alberta, the receiving physician in Calgary could look at the patient online as well, and between the two of us, we could have an intelligent conversation about the patient's hemodynamics and ventilation and oxygenation to try to find any other options. When the transport team arrived, because I had access to all of the patient's information because of this device, I could, in real time, talk to the transport physician, talk to the transport team as they were working on the patient to get the patient stabilized on the transport ventilator that they had and to make sure that they had optimized the patient to the best of their ability. It was like I was virtually there with the amount of information that I had available to me. After the transport team had stabilized the patient, I again could contact the sending and receiving physicians and coordinate the patient's care and to ensure that the receiving physician knew that this patient was on their way and was remaining very, very sick, and that we needed to act, and they needed to act quickly once the patient arrived. So when the patient arrived in Calgary, he was rapidly assessed, stabilized, and cannulated onto ECMO. And thanks to all of the efforts of everybody, this patient has survived. So while it seems like I've been talking a lot about how wonderful the transport team was, or I was, or the sending physician, the receiving physicians were in this story, I want you to understand that I think the real heroes in this are you guys. Because of your work, you enable the technology. And I'm not just talking about the people who work at eCritical, Netcare, even the PACS system. I'm talking about the people who work in application support, technical support, the wiring guys, the network people, the people who are responsible for the My Apps, the website. I can't even begin to describe all of the systems that come into play that were responsible for this patient surviving today because of your work. You guys are the real heroes here. This device and the people who created and support all of the things that connect to it made this patient a survivor when he would have died in Red Deer. Thanks to you, we are working on an integrated province-wide network that allows us to optimize the care of patients in peripheral sites, tertiary centers, and quaternary care that could not otherwise be done. Thank you.